What's the point of climbing a mountain? What lessons are you or others really supposed to gain from the experience? For four men 100 years ago, on June 7, 1913, it may have been about earning distinction as the first to reach the summit of Mount McKinley, the highest peak in North America. Denali is not a highly technical climb, but it can be among the most challenging big peaks on Earth because the wind and weather can be so cold and unpredictable. To this day, only about half the people who try make the top. Now imagine making the attempt 100 years ago in 1913, 4 years before Congress created Mount McKinley National Park. Prior to 1913, 8 previous expeditions failed to reach the summit. They included accomplished climbers, adventurers, and a scoundrel or two. What set the team of 1913 apart was that they were all hardened travelers of vast distances of Alaska wilderness in winter. For these pioneer climbers, there would be no modern 40-minute flight from Talkeetna to a base camp on the Kahiltna Glacier at 7,200 feet. Their journey to the top and back would not be over within today's average of 17 to 21 days. Instead, the Stuck-Karstens expedition began with 90 miles of overland travel by dog team from Nenana, then up the Muldrow Glacier, relaying ever higher more than a ton of supplies. From their base camp, they cut and hauled firewood thousands of feet above treeline. They hunted Dall sheep and caribou to make hundreds of balls of pemmican, a slow-cooked dinner that would sustain them for much of their 77 days on the mountain. On the whole, their journey amounted to 93 days, from winter through spring and into summer. The expedition faced challenges beyond the mountain and fierce conditions. The team leaders quarreled, sometimes stridently. A fire in a supply cache torched silk tents, clothing, critical supplies, precious film, and camera equipment. An earthquake the year before destroyed what had been an easier route for earlier expeditions. Instead of a relative stroll at one point, they spent weeks chopping a staircase more than 3 miles long through shattered ice boulders and debris. And then, on the night before the summit, 3 of the climbers were beset by bad cooking by the 4th. After only a few hours of attempted rest, the men set out at 3 o'clock in the morning when the temperature was 21 below zero. A bitter north wind that day very nearly blew them off an icy slope. But after 10 hours of slow, exhausting work, they achieved their goal. Clearly, the Stuck-Karstens expedition staked a place in achievement lists and history books. But what else can we try to learn from their venture? When it came to homework and legwork, the leaders of this climb managed plenty of both. They sought out the experience of others and studied mistakes to avoid making them their own. They settled upon a best approach and paid close attention to detail. When much of their supplies went up in smoke, they responded to the setback with ingenuity. Rising above panic and despondence, one group traveled to base camp and back for reserves, while another cobbled together what they could from the remains. They sewed together a new tent from canvas. They found a way somehow to make do and move forward. When they found their route was blocked by the work of an earthquake, they persevered. Despite severe storms and the crushing enormity of what they faced, they hacked footholds for themselves up more than 3 miles of broken ice. At this point in their journey, there simply was no other way around but through. The composition of this climbing team proved that diversity works. One was an Episcopal archdeacon born in England who had spent time as a teacher and cowboy in Texas. Another was a gold prospector, mail carrier, and legendary outdoorsman who eventually would be appointed the first superintendent of Mount McKinley National Park. Another was a mission volunteer from Tennessee who was noted for strong character. And the fourth was a young Alaska native whose strength and relationship to the landscape proved invaluable time and again to the survival and success of the group. If anything, this group might teach us a little something about respect. On the day of the summit, expedition co-leader Harry Karstens chose to leave Walter Harper out front, a challenging position that Harper had performed admirably for most all of the climb. So now history records that a 21-year-old Alaska native earned distinction as the first person to set foot at the top of a great mountain. Within 2 days of the summit, they all made it safely back down to base camp, where a loyal assistant had been waiting and tending camp without word for weeks longer than anyone expected. By June 20th, their accomplishment was sealed when word was cabled to newspapers in Seattle and Fairbanks. Over the years, the climbers acknowledged that this trip changed their lives. What now are you going to draw from the experience?